Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is Ed Kranich with the Connecticut Green Bank. We're going to wait just another moment or so for everyone to get settled and get signed in. Got a few still trickling in, and we'll get started in about a minute or two. Thank you. All right, I think we might have actually hit critical mass. So thank you everyone for joining us this evening. Again, my name is Ed Kranich with the Connecticut Green Bank. Rudy, actually, can you just confirm that you can hear me all right? I had my connection has been lost. Okay.
Sounds good, Ed. Yep.
Oh, okay, great. All right, maybe it was a false alarm here. Okay, great. All right, so I'm also joined by Rudy Stirk, Associate Director of Marketing and Outreach with the Connecticut Green Bank. So thanks everyone for joining, and we'll just jump right in. So special thanks to our co-host, Operation Fuel, for helping us out with the presentation and the outreach for tonight's webinar. Operation Fuel, for those who don't know, is a nonprofit in Hartford. They're actually our neighbor in our office park in Hartford. We moved in right next door to them. They were founded in 1977 to address the price of home heating in the wake of the oil embargo, for those who remember back then. The organization's mission is to ensure equitable access to energy for all by providing year-round energy and utility assistance, promoting energy independence, and advocating for affordable energy. Operation Fuel fills the gap for children, senior citizens, working families, and people with chronic medical conditions. They help them keep their homes warm in the winter and keep their lights on, help power cooking appliances and medical equipment, keep food and medications refrigerated, and keep the water running. Operation Fuel has been a key partner with the Connecticut Green Bank for many years, and they've recently been helping us survey homeowners about their knowledge and attitudes toward battery storage. So battery storage really kind of fits right in because Operation Fuel serves those who need it most, especially in times of outages, and that's what we aim to support with energy storage solutions. So our agenda for tonight, we're going to get into batteries 101 to start off, just to kind of set on what we're looking at in terms of technology and how it works. We'll get into why Connecticut needs energy storage specifically from a policy perspective. How will your battery perform if you join energy storage solutions with a battery and enroll? And then finally, what do they cost? That's kind of the million-dollar question, which is not $1 million, thankfully. And then we'll get into questions. So we'll take questions. You can type them in the chat, or actually, I'm sorry, you can type them in the question box throughout. And if there's anything pressing, Rudy, if you could just alert me to it. But otherwise, we'll get to questions at the very end. So let's get started with batteries 101 here. So what are home batteries? I like using this slide now because it compares the size of batteries to a standard refrigerator. This is approximately to scale. So this kind of gives you an idea of sort of the actual piece of physical hardware that you're going to be putting in your home if you choose to install a battery with solar panels at your home. So all three of the options here, we have these two N-phase batteries. We have a SunPower battery pack and a Generac power cell. These are the three most popular pieces of equipment in the program so far. These are all, kind of presented to scale, and they all provide anywhere from 12 to 18 hours of home backup. There's a couple of additional pieces of electrical equipment like panels and things like that, which are, pretty standard. Those kind of fit anywhere. So, just sort of about home batteries and why you might be interested in them. when the grid goes down, your home has no power, of course, and nothing to run your electrical devices with. So home batteries can solve that. It can be charged using solar panels or just using the electric grid. And then when the power goes out, you'll have a clean, quiet, and safe source of backup power. So very similar to a generator, except that you don't need fuel. Your fuel can be the form of charging it with solar panels like most homeowners do, or you can even charge it with the grid when the grid is up, and then you can use the battery if and when the grid goes down during a storm. So this just kind of gives you a little bit of perspective on exactly how big these things are and kind of where they can actually fit in your home. All three of these options, I should say, here that are shown are typically to be installed indoors. Sorry, we got a little bit of noise coming in. Okay, all three of these options here are to be installed indoors, so they would typically go in your garage or your basement. So most of these you wouldn't want to install them outdoors in Connecticut just because it gets too cold in the winter. But from what we've heard from some of these manufacturers, there are some outdoor New England winter rated batteries coming down the pike sometime next year. So now, even though we're talking about batteries, we need to talk about how solar panels work. A lot of folks have solar and a lot of people understand the kind of general gist of how it works. But we'll start, you know, to talk about how they work and how and why you need batteries in the event of an outage, even if you have solar panels. So typically, or in all cases, the solar panels convert sunlight into electricity. The inverter, which let me pull up a pointer here. The inverter, this piece of equipment here, converts that power into alternating current power, which is what your home uses. That goes into the main breaker, and that powers your lights and your electrical equipment in your home. And then any excess will find its way out onto the grid, and you're credited for that kind of as usual. Depending on when you've installed your solar panels, the general arrangement is that your electric company, Eversource or UI, will pay you for the power that you send back in the form of credits on your electric bill. So what happens when the power goes out? In that event, your inverter, the piece of hardware that controls how power is sent into your home and onto the grid, it senses that the grid has gone down, that there's no signal coming from the grid, and so the inverter shuts off for safety, because if a storm occurs or an outage occurs during the daytime when the sun might still be shining on your solar panels and putting power out to them, in the event of the grid being down, if your solar panels are still connected to the grid, they could be feeding power onto the grid, and someone like a line worker could be hurt by that, because they expect that the lines aren't energized, but a system is backfeeding onto the grid. So that's dangerous. You can't have that happen. So when the power goes out on the grid, your solar panel system will shut down. So what batteries do is they kind of sit in between there. During an outage, when the sun's shining, it can produce electricity with your solar panel system, and the inverter will bypass the grid, go into a battery, and then the battery will power your home. So that's kind of the short explanation of why you actually need a battery to run the electrical devices in your home when the grid is down.
So Ed, a quick question popped in that
Sure.
might make sense to answer it here. How much risk of fire is there with batteries?
That's a good question. So in this program, we do require that all batteries that are eligible, so all the equipment that we allow customers to get rebates for, have passed all the required UL certifications. So I believe that's, I'm going to try to remember them. UL 1973 for the inverter, UL 1744 for the battery and 9540 for the battery and inverter system together. So that, coupled with the recent adoption in Connecticut of the latest fire code, National Electric Code and Fire Code, there are a lot of safety requirements, including where the battery is installed. They have to have spacing between the batteries in the event of fire. There has to be smoke alarms. The area where the battery is installed has to be drywalled with a fire-rated drywall. So it's, I think, kind of a belt and suspenders approach to safety, which is always a good idea because you can really never be too safe. But these batteries that are put out by major manufacturers are not really the same as the types of batteries that you see often in headlines that cause fires. Like in New York, there's been a couple of headline events where something like a scooter battery or like a vape pen battery will catch on fire. Those are manufactured to a much lower standard. So home batteries should be considered safer, and they are also required to pass additional safety requirements with UL certification, and they have to be inspected by the town as well. So they do have to pass more building codes. So I hope that's helpful. So jumping into what can home batteries do? What can they power? The short answer is if you have enough money and enough space to put in batteries in your home, you can really power anything. You can run your home for days and days and days if money is not enough in object. But for most of us, you're going to want to pick what loads in your home are most important to you. So I made this little matrix here. Yours, personally might look a little bit different, but you're going to want to think about all the things in your home that you need to or want to power during an outage, and kind of put them in a category of whether it's essential or just nice to have, and then categorize it by, how much power does it actually use. So on the left-hand side, we have things that are pretty low demand, like, television, lights, charging your cell phone. Even running a refrigerator doesn't really use too much power, especially if it's already, been cold, if the fridge is already cold. And then on the right side, we have these high demand things that some of which can be considered more essential, like a stove or heater in an emergency situation. But there are some things like central air, which have a very high demand. They have a very high startup draw. A lot of batteries, unless you have enough of them strung together, you really can't power something like your, whole home, furnace, air conditioning, things like that. And then things like a dryer, of course, you don't really want to run your dryer when you have limited amount of power. So this is all something to think about here when you talk to a contractor and design a system. What they're going to pretty much always want to do is when you're installing the battery, you're going to want to have a critical loads panel. This is what you do when you install a backup generator in any case, but it's going to take these loads, whether it be, the circuit that your kitchen is on, or, your boiler startup and pumps and things like that, your well pump, couple of lights, couple of outlets. You're going to want to put those all on one critical loads circuit breaker panel, and have your battery system just power that panel in the event of an outage. So I talked a little bit about generators, and that's usually top of mind for people. Is when you're concerned about backup, you want to know what the options are. So we're going to talk about the benefits here. So with a portable generator, something that a lot of people have, they're very affordable, they're portable, and you don't even have to have a professional install them. You can plug in your appliances directly to it. If you want a little bit more of a, kind of a permanent solution, then you can have a critical loads panel installed in your home, and you can have a generator hookup installed in your home to safely connect it. But in most cases, people can run something small like this and just put a few, important things on it. They're cheap, but they don't really do everything you need to do, of course. Standby generator, they have a very high output. They can be 10, 20 kilowatts in size, where you can pretty much run your entire home without noticing that the power's gone out. They're kind of mid-range in price. They can be $10,000 to $20,000 installed. They have a plumbed permanent fuel supply, whether it be natural gas or propane, and they're on standby, so they can automatically flip on when the grid goes down. And then finally, batteries. They're silent. They have no fuel, no emissions. You can store and use your own solar energy. They're also always on standby. But the one thing that they have that these other technologies don't is that there are incentives available to purchase one for your home. And in the interest of fairness, drawbacks here with a portable generator, if you have one, you know that they're a pain. They're loud. You have to go out to the shed and pull it out and make sure it's working. Requires maintenance. They have a relatively low output. It's usually only a few thousand watts. They're not on standby, so you have to set it up yourself. And they can be dangerous. They're also loud, and they produce pretty harmful emissions. So it's not something that you really want to have close to your home or an open window. Drawbacks of a permanently installed standby generator: you have to pay for the fuel every time you use it. And if you don't have a fuel supply, you have to get one. So whether you have propane delivered or you have to have a plumber set up your natural gas line to it, there's an additional cost with that, along with standard electrical professional installation. Permitting is required in some areas. It requires maintenance because it's just a big engine, and it's not portable. And of course, there's no incentives available. And then finally, drawbacks of batteries. Really, the main one is that they are a little bit more expensive overall, and we will get into, I have my final slides here that kind of go over all the costs and kind of the range of what it can look like for you. They do require professional permanent installation. You do have to go through interconnection and permitting because this is something that's not only going to serve your home, but it needs to be capable of sending power back to the grid when it's not needed in your home. And of course, it's also not portable. So it's something that's permanently installed. So now that we know kind of what we're talking about with energy storage and what it is, why does Connecticut need energy storage, and why do we have this program? So number one, we all kind of have a little bit short memories because we haven't had power outages in a little while. But if you think back a couple of years, we've had some pretty major storms. And we can attribute these to climate change, that there are these 100-year storms happening a little more often than every 100 years. We have severe hurricanes and thunderstorms that pop up. They can cause trees to come down, cause widespread power outages. This is just not something that we, are conditioned to deal with. We want to have electricity all the time. It's a matter of safety, and it's really a matter of public health. So one main reason for creating this program is that we want to give people resilience in the face of a changing climate. The next reason is that when we're not talking about power outages, we're kind of in this push to electrify everything in our lives. So we have heat pump water heaters, switching those and switching fuel-based heating in our homes over to heat pumps. So, heat pumps use electricity. They are more efficient overall, but again, they need to be connected to the grid to use electricity. Growing popularity of electric vehicles. There are a lot more electrical devices on the grid now than there were even a few years ago. So as the grid gets more and more load on it, it can get pretty costly because I promise this chart will make sense, but let's see. So, this is kind of a visual way of showing how power is produced and used. This isn't really exact for Connecticut, but just to give you an idea, you have kind of this blue section down here under this blue line, this blue line depicts, throughout the day how much energy is being demanded from the grid, or how much power is being demanded from the grid. So kind of midday, you'll see that the demand on the grid gets pretty high. And then just looking at exactly how we buy our power, or how the utilities buy our power, it gets more and more expensive and usually more and more polluting as that demand goes up. You have what's called peaker plants, if you've heard of those, and those are those can be pretty expensive because they don't run very often and they can have very high emissions. So on these really hot summer days, you'll find that's when electricity on the grid is the most expensive. Even if it only needs to be purchased for a few hours out of the day, that drives up the cost of electricity for everyone on the grid. So the intent here is, as we're adding more electrical devices to the grid, and kind of growing this peak here, we need to find a way to bring that peak down. So that's where batteries come in. So they can stabilize the grid by allowing themselves to discharge off to the grid to kind of smooth out some of those peak demands on those really hot summer days, and they can provide on-site backup power when needed. So I know that was a lot of information that we kind of threw at you, but we'll get into now how your battery performs in energy storage solutions. So, why are we paying customers to install batteries at their homes? So in doing this, in joining energy storage solutions, you would install a battery at your home, and you would allow the utility, whether it be Eversource or UI, to have control over your battery during certain times of the year. So in the summertime, which is June, July, August, and September, your battery would be programmed to discharge itself during certain hours of the day. So between 3 and 5 p.m. during weekdays during the summer, it would, after it's been charged by your solar panels, it would discharge, and it would go to your home's load. So between 3 and 8 p.m., your home will use the power in your battery, which is essentially kind of like going off the grid. So it lowers the amount of demand on the grid by allowing your house to use that power. In other events, on other days, we might find that it's going to be a very, very hot day, which would cause a very big spike in demand due to air conditioning and a lot of people being inside. So in that case, we may actually change the schedule for that day. We would notify you in advance and change the schedule of when that dispatch is made. So instead of it being from 3 to 8 p.m., it might be from 2 to 5 p.m., or it might be from 6 to 9 p.m. We would typically not do this on a holiday. So during holidays, during weekends, these passive dispatch events, these pre-programmed events wouldn't happen, but these active events may happen during holidays or weekends. But the utility would always provide you with at least 24 hours notice in advance of doing these events. And that's to make sure that if you choose not to participate, whether it be that you're concerned about a storm or some type of event like that, you want to keep your battery topped up, that's fine. You can opt out of those events. And then finally, I have an example here of what would happen if there's a storm predicted. So if the utilities see that there's a storm that triggers their preparedness protocol, so a storm where there's a large amount of outages likely, they would cancel any events for that day to make sure that your battery has the power that it needs, and that it's topped up in case of an outage. So participation in these passive events is what would provide you with an upfront incentive. And then your optional participation in these active events, as they're called, kind of like on a per event basis, is what would provide you with what we call the performance incentive. So the upfront incentive comes off the top of your total cost of the battery, and the performance incentive is paid to you twice a year at the end of each season. So there's a summer season and a winter season. So lastly here, I'll show you an example really of kind of what we're talking about in terms of cost. So this is based on the average system data that we have in the program for the customers that have participated in the program and that are enrolled right now. So the average size is about 8 kilowatts of power and 18 kilowatt hours of energy. So just to kind of give you an idea of what the average home is installing in terms of backup power, you know, that could be about a day duration on its own. But then when you add solar panels to the mix, that battery can be charged up during the day and then used during the evening. So the total cost before any incentives for such a system is about $31,000, which that seems like a lot, but the upfront incentives and the 30% federal tax credit do take care of quite a bit of that. So the upfront rebate can range for a system like that anywhere from $3,600 to $7,500. And the reason is because we have some adders for customers that are in either low-income households, or if they're in an area that is considered underserved, or if the customer just experiences more frequent power outages. So we have maps and we have a list of criteria on our website, so you can find out, you know, kind of where you qualify. And if you have questions, you can always reach out to us by email. We can, you know, kind of help you find what category you fit into. Following that, there's a 30% federal tax credit. So that would range anywhere from $7,200 to $8,300, again, depending on how much of an upfront incentive you received. And then 10 years of performance incentives. So as I mentioned, these performance incentives are paid seasonally based on how often you participate in these active dispatch events. We expect to call anywhere from 30 to 60 of these a year. So, you know, making sure that your battery is available can net you a pretty good benefit over the 10-year term. So, you know, the net cost of such a system, not including the cost of solar panels, of course, can be anywhere from $9,700 to $17,000. So, you know, it does seem like a lot, and I admit costs are a little bit higher than we want them to be right now. But, you know, financing is available. You know, you can talk to your contractor. There are leasing options available as well. So, you know, this can be something that, you know, if you're comparing it to, say, a standby generator for your home, when you consider all of the incentives and benefits, as well as the fact that it's very low maintenance, quiet, no emissions, you know, this can be something that's very well worth it to some folks. So to get started, first step is you can visit energystorageCT.com to find an eligible contractor and learn about the program. You can explore program data to see what people in your area have installed, and you can find contractors who you know, have installed in your area or have installed more projects. If you'd like to work with a contractor, maybe that you've installed solar panels with in the past, if they're not on the list, you can email us at energystorage@ctgreenbank.com, and we can reach out to that contractor and we can encourage them to apply. It's a pretty simple process, especially if they're familiar with solar. The application, there's no cost or anything to it. So we're always looking to add more pieces of equipment, more contractors to the list, and we're always looking for a way to improve the program. So we are currently heading into our annual review period with our regulators, and we're hoping to make some changes for 2024 that will make storage more attractive to more people. The program does have a goal of 40% of the projects reaching low income or underserved communities. So that's a main point of focus for us, is to ensure that a wide variety of folks have access to this technology, and to the benefits of having backup. So with that, I will open it up to questions. So thank you.
Thanks, Ed. We've got a couple of questions that have come through. First one, how much does the utility using the battery, cycling it, how much was that, reduce the battery's life? Does that have an impact?
Mm-hmm. So we require that all batteries that participate in the program have a 10-year manufacturer warranty. So each battery is going to have a different life cycle, total warranty. But we do expect batteries to participate, over the 10-year period without a significant degradation. So I can't speak to the individual degradation rates. That's going to be something that's actually on a spec sheet for each individual battery. They all can sometimes use slightly different chemistries, but we do expect customers to participate for 10 years without significant issue.
Great, thank you, Ed. Here's a question about dispatch events. It says, participating in all the dispatch events sounds complex. Am I responsible for that? Would I have to manage that, or can it be programmed somehow?
That's a great question, and I completely agree with you that it does sound complex. So for passive dispatch, once your battery is enrolled, the manufacturer of your battery, whether it be SunPower or Generac, Enphase, they will pre-program your battery to do all of these things. So the only thing that you would have to worry about or think about, if you so choose, is to keep an eye on your email, or possibly on your app if it gives you notifications, to say, hey, there's going to be an active event tomorrow. Do you want to opt out of it? And then at that point, you could say, no, I checked the weather and I think there's going to be a big thunderstorm, so I'm going to cancel. I'm going to opt out. But you could really set it and forget it, and as long as there's no surprise outages, the goal is for you to not notice.
Great. So here's a question from someone who I guess has a Posigen system on their house. Could batteries work with a Posigen system?
Also a great question. So Posigen is actually piloting adding batteries to some of their existing customer systems right now. So I recommend you call Posigen first thing tomorrow and ask how you can get involved with that. I know that they have plans to roll out batteries, for their existing customers, and I think their starting plan was to just do a few to begin with. But if you're interested, definitely call them and get yourself on a list, because that is one thing that they're pursuing, and we definitely want to see more customers, especially Posigen customers, adding leased battery systems to their existing PV systems.
Thank you, Ed. This person asks, does it affect house insurance rates, homeowners insurance?
I would contact your homeowner's insurance. Unfortunately, I can't answer that question. I think it would vary between providers. But that's a good FAQ question. We can dig into that a little more, and try to get that on the website FAQ.
Here's a question about where the battery needs to be placed. I know there's been some talk about heated versus insulated, things like that. This person has a basement that is not heated or insulated. Could he still get a battery? Would it reduce the productivity of the battery? What are the rules around that, Ed?
Yeah, so all batteries on their spec sheet will have an operating temperature range, and I think it doesn't get Arctic cold up here. From what I've heard, I've asked that question myself to, I think it was to Generac directly, And in an unheated basement in New England, it really doesn't get too cold down there. It's not like you can see your breath at any point. The installation, though, is actually, that might be a more relevant question regarding fire safety. So if you have an unheated and uninsulated basement, if you don't have drywall on your ceiling rafters, or the rafters above, or you don't have drywall in the room where the battery will be installed, that would unfortunately be an added cost that you would have to add. You would have to frame out a small area and put in drywall for fire to meet the fire code to install that battery. But the temperature shouldn't be an issue.
Thanks, Ed. The question is there a personalized online resource for asking questions about storage, not FAQs, but specific questions? Where would you direct that person? I mean, could they reach out to us as the administrators, or is it better for them to go to a contractor? What's this route?
I think it depends on your type of question. If it's regarding, what can this battery specifically do for me, for my home? I have this configuration, I have this PV system. That's really going to be for a contractor, for a professional electrician. If you have questions about costs or how incentives work or some of the rules of the program or dispatching, we at the Green Bank are happy to answer those questions. We have a contact page on the website, and we'd be happy to give you a call and just chat to go over your questions. But anything electrical related, we would have to defer to a professional for that.
Thanks, Ed. A question about heat pumps. Would battery backup be able to power a heat pump during an outage?
So it could. It's going to depend on the specific battery because different models have different amperages. So some can start air conditioners or heat pumps, and some can't because they don't have enough current to do that. When you start stacking batteries, if you get multiple batteries and you install them together, then you can do that. But over a long period of time, those heat pumps are going to draw a lot of power from those batteries, and it's going to bring the capacity down rather quickly. So again, depending on the situation, if it's -5 degrees outside and there's a power outage and your solar panels are covered in snow, I wouldn't expect to be able to keep your house at 75 degrees. But it's going to depend on the rating of your heat pump, how well your home is insulated. So short answer is that yes, some batteries can power a heat pump, but the question is, how long? And that's going to depend on really how many batteries you want to install in your home.
Great. Here's a question that I'll answer. Is this presentation being recorded and will it be available later? Yes, it is being recorded. We will send out a link, an email to everyone tomorrow with the link to the recording and to the slides that Ed presented, so you can have access to those going forward. A couple more here. How about electrical panel wattage? The question is, what does the panel wattage have to be? But maybe more broadly, do you recommend people getting panel upgrades when they're going in storage?
Yeah, so I think you're referring to the amperage. Most people that even get solar panel systems will, if they don't have a 200 amp service panel, usually they will get an upgrade to do that. And then if you're doing something like upgrading your panel to have a sub panel, that may end up being an additional cost. But I believe that a 200 amp service would be kind of the minimum in this case. I don't know if you would have to go higher than that. Depends if you have something like an EV charger. you know, and a bunch of heat pumps, you may end up having to go higher than 200.
All right, so there's a few more. One is the Tesla question, Ed. I'm going to put it out there like that. What's the status of
Gotcha.
Tesla?
Yeah, so Tesla, they are the most popular battery out there. They're the most popular battery in Connected Solutions, which is a similar offering that comes from Eversource, but without an upfront incentive. It's performance incentive only. We have been in pretty much constant communication to the point of probably badgering them. We really want Tesla to join. A lot of customers have Tesla batteries or want to install a Tesla battery, and they want to join Energy Storage Solutions to get a rebate naturally. Tesla has been difficult to kind of bring to the table. You know, there are some of the kind of startup kind of barriers with the program. We've really done our best to move them out of the way to make the program more palatable for them. You know, it's very hard to make them move. They are a big company, but they work on a lean staff, and we've been told by most of our contacts that they just don't have the manpower to devote to you know, programming batteries and ensuring compliance in this program and things like that. It's frustrating to us, and I know it's certainly frustrating to contractors and customers, but we are hopeful that, you know, we might be able to make things move by the end of the year. The competing program that they currently operate in, Connected Solutions, is set to stop enrollment on December 1st, and to completely end, you know, all enrollment for anyone that's in process by January 1st at the latest. So by next year, Energy Storage Solutions will be the only incentive program in Connecticut for batteries. So we hope that will kind of convince them to move. But I understand it is frustrating, and we're really doing our best to try to convince them that this is the best program for their customers. So I'm sorry I don't have a better response on that, but we are trying.
Thank you, Ed. That's a good response, definitely. A couple of questions here relate to financing and potential other ways to cover the costs that are not covered by the incentive program. One person asked about LIHEAP, which is the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program. I don't know if LIHEAP can help cover the installation cost at all. And I don't know if you have any insight on that one.
Unfortunately, I don't for LIHEAP, but we could follow up with this person. We could probably check so we can email the admins for that program to see how they would do that. I can say that we do have the Smarty loan, and I see that there's another question in here about you know, enabling folks, you know, low income or poor credit to get batteries. We do have the Smarty loan. There are some, you know, debt to income limitations, and but the Smarty loan can serve some customers, and as I mentioned earlier, Posigen, who is an installer that works with low-income customers or moderate-income customers, they provide leases for solar panels, and you know, really they do kind of focus on that market. You know, we expect them to serve a good chunk of that market in the coming, I'd say probably in the coming year or so. But if you're interested in getting a battery system, and especially if you already have a Posigen system, definitely reach out to them to ask about a battery, because their solution is definitely the most affordable that I've seen. It's just not fully rolled out yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other point on Smarty, I think it goes down to like a FICO score of 580. So certainly a lower credit threshold there, and you know, it does have low interest rates and longer terms if people are interested in that. So I think just maybe 2 more questions, Ed, and we can wrap it up. If there are questions that we don't answer, folks, please feel free to email us, reach out directly. Some questions are just easier to answer that way as they pertain to specific homes or situations. As far as Operation Fuel, if you have questions about Operation Fuel, I know they're starting to take applications again for assistance on August 1st, but definitely, check out their website if you're interested in any assistance programs like that. So I think that covers the majority of the questions, Ed.
Great. Yeah, so as Rudy said, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to email. We have we'll have that in the email that goes out in a couple days with the recording. EnergyStorageCT.com. You can contact us through there. You can find a list of contractors and learn more about the program. And then in the meantime, you can always ask us really anything. We're here for that. So thanks everyone for joining. And anything else, Rudy, before we adjourn?
One last question popped in that I think is a good way to close it out. What is the general timeline on installation?
Oh, that's a great question. So a battery can be installed in a day or so. If you're installing it with solar panels, that might add a day or two to the installation. Primarily, the waiting time that you'll see these days could be with actually getting the battery, like physically getting it to your home. We've all heard supply chain this and that, but some batteries are in shorter supply than others. So that's one thing that could delay it. And the other is potentially the interconnection process, because batteries and solar panels need to be connected to the grid, so they need special permission. So that process can take about a month or more sometimes, depending on where you are physically in the state and what circuit you're on for the utility. So I mean, the process from calling a contractor to actually getting the thing turned on and operating can be anywhere from, we expect anywhere from a month or 2 months, all the way up to, 6 to 9 months or even a year in some cases if it's something that's back ordered. So it's really going to depend on your contractor's availability, how backed up they are in terms of their work, and what equipment they have and if they have it in stock.
Great. All right, sounds good.
So, all right. I think that about covers it. So thank you, everyone, and have a great night.